Tep, glad to be here this afternoon to really share with you some of the work that I've been doing over the years in the field of Africana studies and really doing systematic primary research in different places around the world. I want to thank Brother Larry for that introduction, and also Sister Nzinga and others who's put the time in to really gather us here this weekend. I want to share with you a critical issue that confronts us, because as we look at the classical African civilizations of Kush and Nubia and Kemet, the evidence, the physical evidence, is actually vanishing as we speak. So for more than a decade, I've been in the field. I've gone to different pyramid sites, temple sites, tomb sites, and ancient residential sites to really document the fact that the evidence is actually vanishing. This past summer, I spent a couple of weeks in the Sudan to be able to record and document the numerous Kushite artifacts that will be submerged and flooded this year. There are thousands of sites that we will never know about, we will never see, because they have never been excavated. So in the short time that I have, I want to introduce you to the field work that I was a part of this past summer and give you an idea of the biggest dam project in the history of the Sudan. That was kind of nice this weekend. I spelled dam this way, but usually I spell it D-A-M-N because this dam project is going to destroy an important archaeological region, but it also is going to dislocate up to 70,000 Sudanese. So I'm focusing on the Merowe Dam and the flooding of ancient Kush. Now, of course, this has already been mentioned. Dr. Beatty has talked about it, and many of us were bombarded with questions about this National Geographic front cover. But what I want you to know is that this term of the Black Pharaohs is not new. It's been used since 1996. Robert Moorcock wrote a book called The Black Pharaohs. I actually met Robert Moorcock when I lived in Europe. I was in Europe for a year doing research in 11 European countries. I went to all of the museums, institutes, and libraries throughout Western Europe that have ancient Kushite, Nubian, and artifacts from Kemet. And when I was based in London, I met Robert Moorcock, and a very interesting person. He is somebody that's being promoted in London as an expert on the Sudan. I can tell you different stories. Let me just tell you one story about Robert Moorcock. When Martin Bernal's book came out, Black Athena, the University of London had a series of talks to bring in scholars to talk about different aspects of Martin Bernal's book, Black Athena. The one day that Robert Moorcock was speaking about Bernal's book, I happened to be in London that day, and Robert Moorcock engaged in a systematic, unprincipled attack on African scholars. It was a small group, no more than, I would say, 20 people or so, to hear Robert Moorcock launch an attack on African scholars from A to Z. And as soon as he finished his unprincipled attack, what was interesting is that he came to me to do one thing: apologize. He issued public damage but gave a private apology. I told him I didn't accept that, because if he was sincere, he wouldn't have launched the attack in the first place. And if he made a mistake, then he certainly should have done whatever, he should have tried to undo whatever public damage he did. But Robert Moorcock has been promoted by the British Museum and others to talk about Kemet. And one thing I want to say before I show you the slides is this idea of focusing on Kush and Nubia. This goes back to the early 1990s. Before 1991 or so, there was no public collection in the world that had a permanent Kushite or Nubian collection, not one. Now you have the Oriental Institute in Chicago. They have a permanent exhibit there. There's a permanent exhibit in Washington, D.C., permanent exhibit in Toronto, permanent exhibit in the British Museum. You can name the places that suddenly have permanent collections. Boston, they have a permanent collection there as well. And there is only one person that I'm familiar with that ever said why, all of a sudden, that there was a focus to have permanent Kushite and Nubian exhibits in the early 1990s. Because all of these places that organized these exhibits, not one of these museums did any new excavation or new research. These are artifacts they had in their basement for more than half a century or 3/4 of a century. And his name escapes me, but the guy is one person in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts said very clearly why they suddenly came out with a permanent exhibit. He said it was a response to the Afrocentric movement. And that's why they took the artifacts from the basement and put them on display. Because as we've made progress in the 1980s to reclaim the Nile Valley and to reclaim Kemet, these institutes around the Western world decided to move a step ahead and suddenly start talking about Kush in Nubia for the first time and give us their guideline of how we should think about them. So this is when this term, the Black Pharaohs, came out to suggest that the other pharaohs and kings and rulers in Kemet were not black. So what you saw in National Geographic is just more of the same. But Robert Moorcock, in his book, The So-Called Black Pharaohs, came out in 1996. It's redundant anyway. Of course pharaohs were black. That's like saying the Sahara Desert. Well, in Arabic, Sahara means desert. So who would talk about the Sahara Desert? Or somebody talking about the wet rain. Why would somebody repeat themselves? The rain by nature is what? Is wet. So it doesn't make any sense to talk about black pharaohs. Anyway, this is nothing more than propaganda, because the only time that the Kushites and Nubians in the Sudan are mentioned is if they are in conflict with the brothers and sisters in Kemet, the ancestors in Kemet, or if they imitated them. They imitated their art, imitated their buildings, imitated their pyramids. And this is the kind of propaganda we get. So just wanted to mention that. Now, this past summer, I spent a lot of time in the northern region of Sudan. So I was in Khartoum for a while, but basically what was most concerned was the fourth cataract. A cataract is an area with a lot of rocks, so it's hard to navigate by boat or ship through a cataract region. And that's where the Merowe Dam is currently being constructed. And it is a project that's going to flood a 108-mile area. It's going to inundate about 2,500, I don't think you heard me, 2,500 newly excavated Kushite artifacts. 2,500. And as I said, about 70,000 people will be dislocated. This is the area here, the fourth cataract region. And it's not going to flood some of the more popular monuments in the Sudan, but the fourth cataract will be inundated. So what my task was this past summer of '07, and I hope to go back this year before they open up the dam and flood the area, was to go behind the dam, to go to the flood zone and document and record what I could while we can still do so. So let me move forward and show you. So this is myself and my colleague. I asked my colleague from Germany to join me, Brother Sorwat, because he knows the area, he knows the language, he knows the people, the customs. So he was invaluable, because you really have to have contacts to be able to move through the Sudan and to get to the dam area, because it's almost like high security in the area. This is an image of the Merowe Dam. And it's interesting because as we walked around the area, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of workers. By the way, this is a government project, and it's a $1.7 billion project, and it is international support to help build the dam. In theory, or should I say officially, the dam is to create hydroelectricity. That's what we're told. But the Sudanese don't believe that. Most of them are not in favor of that. Many of the people are still in the flood zone. They don't want to move because it's their homeland. And not only that, the government is not compensating them. But this is an international effort, a $1.7 billion project. And one of the most interesting groups that invest in the project is the Chinese government and the Chinese construction firm. We saw about 10% of the workers were Chinese working on the project. In fact, all of the signs in the Merowe Dam area are always in 3 languages. This is a joint venture, so this is Arabic, obviously this is English. Now you have approached the construction site of the Merowe Dam project, and what language is this? It's Chinese. Every sign in the 3 languages.